Welcome back to the channel, US Rare Coins News, Top 1. Today we are talking about a coin that almost everyone has seen, many people have spent, and very few truly understand. The 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar. A coin that looks ordinary, but in the right condition, or with the right mistake, it can stop collectors in their tracks. Most people think modern half dollars are boring. No silver. No big mystery. Just pocket change. But what if I told you some 1972 D. Kennedy halves are worth far more than 50 cents, and the reason is hiding in plain sight? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for, and you might want to grab a magnifying glass tonight. Here's what we're uncovering today. What makes the 1972 D special, the tiny details that separate a common coin from a collector coin, and the rare error that has sent prices way higher than anyone expected. And at the end, I'll tell you what this coin is actually selling for in today's market. Let's take a good look at the coin itself. Picture a large, solid half dollar. On the front, you see President John F. Kennedy, facing left, with strong, clean lines. This design was introduced after his assassination and quickly became one of the most emotional coins in US history. On the back, the presidential seal stands proud, with the eagle, shield, and stars. This one was struck at the Denver Mint, which you can confirm by the small D mint mark just below Kennedy's neck. Now here's where things get interesting. By 1972, Kennedy half dollars were no longer silver. They were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition. Because of that, millions were spent, dropped, scratched, and ignored. And that's exactly why high-quality examples are so hard to find today. Most surviving coins are worn, dull, or damaged, but condition is only the beginning of the story. There is one detail on the back of the coin that can change everything. Look closely near the eagle's right leg. You should see the designer's initials, FG, for Frank Gasparo. On most coins, they're there. But on some 1972 D. Kennedy half dollars, those initials are missing or extremely weak. This is known as the no FG error. This wasn't supposed to happen. The initials were part of the design. But due to over-polished dies at the Denver Mint, the FG was erased before striking some coins. The result? A small batch of half dollars that look normal at first glance, but are anything but normal to collectors. And here's the cliffhanger moment. Many people have owned this coin for years without ever flipping it over and checking that tiny spot. The difference between a common coin and a valuable one can be smaller than a grain of rice. There are other things collectors watch for too. Strong strikes with sharp hair details on Kennedy. Clean fields without heavy marks. Full details on the eagle's feathers. Even subtle doubling in the lettering can raise interest, especially on well-preserved coins. Historically, this coin represents a turning point. It's part of the post-silver era, when half dollars quietly faded from everyday use. People stopped saving them, banks stopped ordering them, and circulation dried up. That's why finding a truly nice 1972 D today is much harder than the mintage number suggests. So what is it actually worth? A heavily worn example is usually worth face value, about 50 cents. A clean uncirculated example can sell for a few dollars. But a confirmed 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar with the no FG error has sold at auction for hundreds of dollars, and in high-grade condition, some have reached into the low thousands. That's not hype. That's real collector demand. So now I want to hear from you. Do you own any Kennedy half dollars? Have you ever checked the back for missing initials? And which US coin would you love to add to your collection someday? To wrap it up, the 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar proves that even modern coins can hold big surprises. It's not about age alone. It's about details, condition, and knowing what others overlook. Top 2. Today we are talking about a coin that looks like it came from the American Revolution, but actually came from the 1970s. A coin so famous that millions of people saved it, spent it, forgot it, and some unknowingly let serious money slip through their fingers. This is the 1776 to 1976 Kennedy half dollar, and there's way more going on here than most people realize. At first glance, it feels familiar. Almost too familiar. But in the next few minutes, I'll show you why some versions of this coin are common, why others are quietly valuable, and how tiny details can turn an everyday bicentennial half into a collector's prize. And at the end, I'll break down what this coin is actually worth today, not hype, not guesses, real market numbers. Now bring the camera in close and let's really look at it. On the front, you see John F. Kennedy, just like other half dollars. But look carefully at the date. Instead of 1 year, you see two. 1776 and 1976. That alone makes this coin instantly different. It was struck to celebrate 200 years of American independence, and the U.S. Mint did something it almost never does. They changed the design on the back, flipped the coin over, and there it is. Independence Hall. A historic building that witnessed the birth of the nation, now sitting proudly on a half dollar. This reverse design was created by Seth Huntington and chosen through a national competition. If you're adding B-roll here, this is the moment for a slow pan across the building details and the bell tower. This design only appeared for this bicentennial issue, and then it was gone forever. Here's the first big twist. These coins were minted in massive numbers. Hundreds of millions. That's why so many people assume they're worthless. But mintage alone doesn't decide value. Composition, mint mark, condition, and errors matter more than most people think. Some bicentennial Kennedy halves were made for circulation in copper-nickel clad. Others were struck in 40% silver, and those were never meant for everyday spending. If you see an S mint mark and the coin has a slightly different weight and sound, you might be holding silver. A close-up shot comparing edge colors works perfectly here. The silver version shows a solid gray edge instead of a copper stripe, and now comes the part most people miss: errors. There are double die varieties where the lettering or date appears slightly doubled under magnification. There are off-center strikes, missing clad layers, and weak strikes that collectors hunt aggressively. These aren't obvious at first glance. They hide until someone looks closely, and that's why so many are still out there, unnoticed. Here's a fun historical detail. People hoarded these coins like crazy in 1976. Many thought they'd instantly become rare. Ironically, that hoarding is why high-grade circulation coins exist today, but also why truly perfect examples are so hard to find. Most saved coins were still handled, stacked, and scratched. So what is this coin actually worth? A circulated clad example is usually worth face value to about $1. An uncirculated clad example can sell for a few dollars. A 40% silver bicentennial Kennedy half dollar commonly sells in the range of $8 to $15 depending on condition. Proof silver examples can go higher. But error coins and top-grade certified examples have sold at auction for hundreds of dollars, and in rare cases, over $1,000 when condition and rarity line up perfectly. That's the real difference knowledge makes. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own a bicentennial Kennedy half dollar? Have you ever checked if it's silver or looked for errors? And what's the one US coin you've always wanted to find in your change? To wrap it up, the 1776 to 1976 Kennedy half dollar is more than a souvenir. It's a snapshot of American history, a unique one-year design, and a reminder that value often hides behind familiar faces. Top 3. Today we are talking about a coin that was never supposed to impress anyone, yet quietly became one of the most misunderstood Kennedy half dollars ever made. The 1967 Kennedy half dollar. No mint mark. No proofs for the public. No normal collector sets. And somehow, that strange situation is exactly what makes this coin interesting, and in some cases, surprisingly valuable. Most people see a 1967 half dollar and think it's just another old coin. But stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you why this coin exists at all, what makes it different from other Kennedy halves, the errors collectors hunt for, and how some examples have sold for far more than anyone expects at the end. Let's start by putting this coin under the camera. On the front, you see John F. Kennedy, strong and clean, with deep relief compared to later years. There is no mint mark anywhere. That's not a mistake. In 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks completely to discourage collectors from hoarding coins. This was during a national coin shortage, and the government wanted coins circulating, not sitting in drawers. flip it over and you see the presidential seal with the eagle. Simple. Powerful. Familiar. But here's the first big twist. This coin is made of 40% silver. That alone separates it from millions of later Kennedy halves that contain no silver at all. A slow edge close-up works perfectly here. You'll notice far less copper color than modern coins. Now let's talk about why 1967 is different from every other year. There were no proof coins sold to the public. None. Instead, the mint produced something called special mint sets. These weren't proofs, and they weren't regular circulation strikes either. They fall somewhere in between. Sharper than normal coins. Smoother surfaces. But not mirror-like. If you're showing visuals, this is the moment to compare a circulation strike to a special mint set example side by side. This strange decision created confusion then, and it still does today. Most 1967 Kennedy halves were heavily used. Spent. Scratched. Lost. But high-quality examples, especially from special mint sets, are much harder to find than people think. And that's where value starts to climb. Now let's raise the stakes. Errors. Some 1967 Kennedy half dollars show double die features, especially in the lettering and Kennedy's profile. Others have off-center strikes or clipped planchets. There are even examples with missing or weak details due to worn dies. These errors don't jump out at you. They wait quietly until someone actually looks, and here's the cliffhanger. Many people own this coin because it feels ordinary. It doesn't scream rare. But the right version, in the right condition, can completely change the story. A quick historical moment makes this coin even cooler. 1967 sits right in the middle of America's shift away from silver coinage. It's part of the final chapter before silver disappeared from everyday U.S. coins. This half dollar isn't just money. It's a snapshot of economic change. So what is it worth today? A heavily worn 1967 Kennedy half dollar is usually worth a few dollars due to its silver content. A clean uncirculated example often sells in the range of $5 to $10. Special mint set examples in high grade can reach into the tens of dollars. And rare error coins or top-grade certified pieces have sold at auction for several $100s, with the very best examples climbing even higher. That's real value. No exaggeration. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own a 1967 Kennedy half dollar? Have you ever checked if it came from a special mint set? And which Kennedy half dollar do you think deserves more attention than it gets? To wrap it up, the 1967 Kennedy half dollar proves that quiet years can still produce fascinating coins. No mint marks. No proofs. Just silver, history, and hidden surprises. Top 4. Today we are talking about a coin that most people would walk past without a second look, yet it quietly marks the end of an era in American money. The 1971 Kennedy half dollar. This is the first regular issue Kennedy half that contains no silver at all, and that single fact changed everything. If you've ever assumed this coin was boring or worthless, you're about to see why that assumption can be a mistake. Stick with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you why this coin caused outrage when it was released, what collectors secretly hunt for on this date, the small details that can make one example stand out from millions, and what the strongest examples are actually selling for today. Bring the camera in close. On the front, you see President John F. Kennedy, the familiar portrait that had already become a symbol of national memory by the early 70s. Below his neck is the D mint mark, showing this coin was struck in Denver. The design looks normal, but the feel is different. Thinner. Lighter. That's because 1971 was the year silver officially disappeared from circulating Kennedy half dollars. Flip it over and you'll see the presidential seal with the eagle. Strong, bold, but often softly struck on this date. A slow rotation shot here really helps, especially across the eagle's feathers and the lettering. Many 1971 halves show weak details because the mint was pushing high production numbers. Here's where the story gets interesting. Collectors were not happy in 1971. People had grown used to silver halves, and suddenly this large coin felt cheaper. As a result, many were spent quickly, abused in circulation, and ignored. That's why high-grade examples are much harder to find than the massive mintage suggests. Now let's talk about what collectors actually look for. One key feature is strike quality. Strong hair detail above Kennedy's ear and clear feather separation on the eagle can dramatically increase desirability. Another big one is surface condition. Clean fields with minimal marks are rare for this year. If you're adding B-roll, this is the perfect moment for extreme close-ups under good lighting. And then there are the errors. Some 1971D Kennedy halves show double die characteristics in the lettering, especially In God We Trust, and Liberty. Others were struck off-center or on improperly prepared planchets. There are even examples with missing clad layers, exposing a strange, dull surface that immediately catches the eye. These errors don't announce themselves. They wait for someone patient enough to look closely. Here's the cliffhanger most people miss. Because this coin has no silver, many collectors never bother checking it carefully. That means rare errors and high-grade survivors often go unnoticed, sitting in jars, boxes, or old collections. Historically, this coin represents a turning point. It's the moment the Kennedy half-dollar went from precious metal to pure face value. That shift changed how Americans viewed the coin, and it quietly shaped its future. So what is it worth today? A worn 1971D Kennedy half-dollar is usually worth face value. A clean uncirculated example can sell for a few dollars. High-grade certified coins have sold for tens of dollars, and rare error examples have reached into the hundreds at auction when demand is strong. That's real market behavior, not hype. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own a 1971D Kennedy half-dollar? Have you ever checked it closely for errors or strike quality? And which Kennedy half-dollar do you think is the most underrated? To wrap it up, the 1971D Kennedy half-dollar may not have silver, but it carries history, controversy, and hidden potential. It's a reminder that value isn't always about metal. Sometimes it's about timing, details, and what everyone else overlooks. Top 5. Today we are talking about a coin that almost nobody talks about, yet it hides one of the most surprising modern twists in the entire Kennedy half-dollar series. The 1998 P. Kennedy half-dollar. On the surface, it looks ordinary. No silver. No special date. No big hype. But that's exactly why collectors keep missing what makes this coin quietly interesting. In the next few minutes, I'll show you why this coin barely circulated, what separates a normal example from a collectible one, the small errors that can change its value, and how certain versions have surprised collectors at auction by the end. Let's put it under the camera. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of John F. Kennedy, clean and sharp, with the P Mint mark just below his neck, showing it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Flip it over and you get the presidential seal, the eagle with outstretched wings. If you're adding visuals, this is a great moment for a slow rotation and tight close-ups on the fields and lettering. Here's the first thing most people don't realize. By 1998, Kennedy half-dollars were barely used in everyday life. Banks didn't order them. Stores didn't want them. That means many of these coins went straight from the mint into storage, bags, or collector sets. They weren't worn down in pockets. They were ignored, and that creates a strange situation. There are plenty of coins, but very few people actually look closely at them. Now let's talk about what makes a 1998 P interesting to collectors. Strike quality matters a lot on this date. Some coins were struck with soft details, especially in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers. Others came out sharp and bold. A side-by-side comparison shot here really helps. Collectors pay attention to those details more than you might expect. Surface condition is another key factor. Clean fields with minimal marks are harder to find than people assume. Even coins that never circulated were often tossed together in bags, picking up scratches along the way. Now for the part that keeps collectors watching, errors. There are 1998 P. Kennedy half-dollars with double die features, particularly in the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust. Some show off-center strikes. Others were struck on improperly prepared planchets. These errors are subtle. They don't jump out. You have to slow down, tilt the coin, and really look. This is where macro close-ups shine on screen. Here's the cliffhanger most people miss. Because this coin has no silver and no famous story attached to it, many collectors never bother checking it carefully. That's why error coins and top-grade examples are still being discovered today. Historically, this coin represents the quiet era of U.S. coinage. The Kennedy half-dollar was still being made, but almost no one was using it. That alone makes these late 90s issues fascinating. They're modern, yet strangely disconnected from daily life. So what is it worth? A circulated 1998 P. Kennedy half-dollar is usually worth face value. A clean uncirculated example can sell for a few dollars. High-grade certified examples have sold for tens of dollars. And confirmed error coins, depending on the type and condition, have reached into the hundreds at auction, nothing exaggerated. Just real demand meeting the right coin. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own any 1998 Kennedy half-dollars? Have you ever checked one closely for errors? And which modern U.S. coin do you think is the most overlooked? To wrap it up, the 1998 P. Kennedy half-dollar proves that even quiet, modern coins can hold surprises. Value isn't always loud. Sometimes it waits for someone curious enough to look closer. Top 6. Today we are talking about a coin that technically never reached your pocket, yet it's dated like it should have. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar. That sounds normal, right? Here's the shocker. In 1973, the U.S. Mint did not release Kennedy half-dollars into circulation at all. Zero. None. And that strange decision is exactly why this coin has such a unique story. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you why this half-dollar exists even though nobody was meant to spend it, how collectors actually get their hands on one, the errors that can push its value way up, and what this coin is really worth today when the right example shows up at auction. Let's put it on screen and slow things down. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of John F. Kennedy. Clean. Balanced. Confident. Look just below the neck and you'll find either a P or a D mint mark, meaning Philadelphia or Denver. That already tells you something important. This coin was made, but not for everyday use. Flip it over and there's the presidential seal with the eagle. Bold design, but often lightly struck. A close-up across the eagle's feathers works great here, because strike quality is a big deal for this year. Now here's the twist that makes collectors lean in. 1973, the U.S. Mint decided not to release Kennedy half-dollars for circulation. Demand was low. The coin was bulky. People weren't using it. So instead of sending them to banks, the mint placed these coins only in official mint sets. That means every genuine 1973 Kennedy half-dollar originally came sealed from the mint. That alone makes it different, but it gets better. There were also no proof Kennedy half-dollars made for collectors that year. None. If you collect proofs, 1973 leaves a noticeable gap. That missing piece has turned this date into a quiet key for certain Kennedy collectors. Now let's talk condition. Because these coins came from mint sets, many people assume they're all perfect. That's not true. Coins were still handled during packaging. They were stacked, slid, and sometimes scratched before sealing. Truly clean examples with strong strikes and minimal marks are much scarcer than you'd expect. This is where visuals really help. Side-by-side shots of an average example versus a sharply struck one instantly show the difference. Now for the part that changes everything, errors. There are 1973 Kennedy half-dollars with double die features in the lettering, off-center strikes, and even missing or weak clad layers. These errors are rare, but they exist. And because people didn't search these coins as aggressively as earlier silver issues, some surprises are still being discovered. Here's the cliffhanger. Most people who own this coin know it came from a mint set, but they've never examined it closely. That's where value hides. Historically, this coin sits right in the middle of the Kennedy half-dollar's identity crisis. No silver. No circulation. No proofs. It's a coin that feels forgotten, and forgotten coins are often the ones collectors come back to later. So what is it worth today? A typical 1973 Kennedy half-dollar in average mint set condition usually sells for a few dollars. A clean, high-grade example can sell for several tens of dollars. Certified top-grade coins have sold for much more. And rare error examples, depending on the type and condition, have reached into the hundreds of dollars at auction.no hype. Just real results. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own a 1973 Kennedy half dollar? Did it come from a mint set? And which Kennedy half dollar do you think is the most underrated of them all? To wrap it up, the 1973 Kennedy half dollar proves that a coin doesn't need silver or circulation to be interesting. Its rarity comes from decisions, not metal. And sometimes, that's even more fascinating. Top 7. Today we are talking about a coin that almost nobody ever checks, even when it's sitting right in front of them. The 1986 D Kennedy half dollar. Most people see it and think one thing only. Face value. End of story. But here's the surprise. In the right condition, or with the right flaw, this quiet coin can turn into something collectors actually chase. Stick with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you why this coin barely circulated, what makes the Denver issue different, the small details that separate a common piece from a collectible, and the kinds of examples that have shocked people when they hit the market at the end. Let's get it on camera. On the front, you see John F. Kennedy, sharp and familiar, with the D mint mark just below his neck, showing it was struck in Denver. The design hasn't changed much by this point, but look closely at the surfaces. The fields. The hair detail above the ear. This is where things start to matter. Flip it over and you see the presidential seal with the eagle. A slow rotation here really helps, especially across the feathers and lettering. Now here's something most people don't realize. By 1986, Kennedy half dollars were almost invisible in everyday life. Banks didn't order them. Cashiers didn't want them. They were struck mainly to meet government requirements, not public demand. That means many 1986 D halves went straight into storage, bags, and rolls instead of pockets. That sounds like a good thing, right? Not always. Even coins that never circulated picked up marks from being stored in bulk. So finding a truly clean, sharply struck example is harder than you'd expect. This is where collectors slow down and start paying attention. Now let's talk about what makes this coin interesting. Strike quality on the 1986 D can be hit or miss. Some coins show weak hair detail on Kennedy and soft feathers on the eagle. Others are bold and crisp. A side-by-side close-up here tells the story better than words. Strong strikes stand out immediately. Surface condition is another big factor. Clean fields with minimal contact marks are scarce. Even small scratches can make a big difference in collector value, and now comes the part that keeps people watching. Errors. There are 1986 D Kennedy half dollars with double die features, especially in the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust. Some show off-center strikes. Others were struck on flawed planchets, creating unusual textures or missing layers. These errors don't jump out at first glance. They hide until someone takes the time to really look. Here's the cliffhanger most people miss. Because this coin has no silver and no famous story attached to it, collectors often ignore it completely. That's why error coins and top-grade examples still slip through unnoticed. Historically, this coin sits deep in the modern era of U.S. coinage. It represents the period when half dollars became more symbolic than practical. Still produced. Rarely used. Quietly waiting. So what is it worth today? A circulated 1986 D Kennedy half dollar is usually worth face value. A clean uncirculated example can sell for a few dollars. High-grade certified coins have sold for tens of dollars. And confirmed error examples, depending on type and condition, have reached into the hundreds at auction.no hype. Just real numbers. Now I want to hear from you. Do you own a 1986 D Kennedy half dollar? Have you ever checked one closely for errors or strike quality? And which modern US coin do you think collectors are sleeping on right now? To wrap it up, the 1986 D Kennedy half dollar proves that even overlooked coins can carry hidden potential. You don't need silver or age. Sometimes all you need is attention to detail. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more US coin stories you won't hear everywhere else. And keep watching, because the next coin worth checking might already be sitting in your collection.